work session of the Pleasant Grove City Council. All council members are present. At this time, we will have a Pledge of Allegiance led by Lynn Walker, and then opening remarks will be offered by Sid Lamone.
Will the audience please rise and repeat the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to come to City Council meeting tonight as friends, neighbors, elected officials, staff, and community members to be able to listen and learn and make decisions on behalf of the citizens that we feel are in the best interest of our community at this time. We thank you for the opportunity we have to serve and to live in Pleasant Grove, and we thank you for all the many things that was given to our community at this time. Please ask that we can be civil and respectful of one another's views and be able to conduct ourselves in a respectful way. Please ask that we can have an open mind and open heart as we go throughout the meeting, and that we can be able to be good stewards and examples to other residents in the city. We love you and we say these things in the name of my son Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, our first item of business, we've asked and invited Mr. Bob Bonar, General Manager for Snowbird Resorts, to come and kind of present to us what their plans are in American Fork Canyon, and also for the council to be able to ask questions so that we can become more familiar with how this might affect the city of Pleasant Grove, its water rights that are up there, and the enjoyment of the area by the citizens. We won't be having public comment this evening. I believe at our next council work session, we've invited Mark. Oh, my mind is blowing. Mark is going to come, and his group is also going to be invited to present information and concerns that they might have regarding this subject, and we'll kind of formulate our own position as a council as to what's in the best interest for the citizens of Pleasant Grove. So at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Bonar to come and introduce yourself, and also any presentation that you've prepared.
Well, good evening to everyone, and a special thank you to the mayor and all of the council members for making time for us tonight. We greatly appreciate your time in allowing us to come and make a presentation to you tonight about something that is important to Snowbird and something that's important to all of our community, and that is water quality. So thank you very, very much. Snowbird's plan is to put 2 additional ski lifts and a zip line in the upper part of Maryland Gulch, and also to relocate and upgrade an existing lift in Mineral Basin. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about what our plan on 10 is, but that is what our plan involves. And what I'd like to do now is to introduce to you Neil Arts. Our main goal tonight is to present to you some water quality facts, and also the basis of a monitoring plan that we want to put forward that would be in effect pre-construction, during construction, and after construction. And so to give you more details on that, I'd like to turn it over, if I may, to Neil Arts. Sure. He will tell you a little bit about his credentials and his background, and give you our presentation. I would ask if it's okay, Mayor, that you hold your questions in regards to the water quality issues and the monitoring plan until after he's finished his presentation.
do our best.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Councilmember, thank you. Touch on qualifications first. I think that made a big racket.
Mr. Arts, if you don't mind just pulling that thing towards you, the whole thing, and the most important is making sure the tip is pointed at your mouth.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes.
As to my qualifications for doing this work, my name is Neil Arts again. I have a PhD from Utah State University in renewable natural resources. I've been in the environmental consulting field for 25 years. For the last 20 years, my company, Cirrus Ecological Solutions, has been working doing various kinds of environmental assessments associated with federal and state agencies and laws and environmental regulations that they enforce. Examples of work that are relevant to this project, I think, are that in those 16 years since we hung out our own shingle, we've worked with the Forest Service to prepare over 50 environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. The majority of them address winter recreational development, which is an endeavor that's always got water quality issues. We've also worked with the Utah Division of Water Quality on preparation of 12 TMDL water quality plans, including the Jordan River from Utah Lake down. And we've worked with Salt Lake County on their watershed quality stewardship plan. Based on this work, our reputation at the agency is solid. I think it reflects our commitment to objectivity and to sound science. And I'm confident that that's why we were selected as the independent contractors to complete this work, which is to determine in accordance with the county land use ordinance whether this project would unreasonably diminish any environmental values, or in this case water quality. So we projected there a couple of different views of the project area, the one on the left with the existing conditions and the one on the right with summarizing the plan that Bob just outlined, the two new lifts and the replacement lift. So I guess the first thing to note by way of stage setting is that this water quality situation has been cast as really complicated and difficult, and poorly understood, and really it's not any of that. There's always a certain amount of technology and jargon and talking about it and so forth, but basically the mining situation in Upper American Fork's been studied pretty extensively since the 1970s by the EPA, the Forest Service, several universities, lots of work done up there. And based on that, the problems, they've determined that the water quality problems are generally localized for reasons that we'll get to in a minute. They mostly have affected the upper part of the drainage up there. The problem sites there that contribute to these issues have been identified and mostly remediated. And all of the regulatory and land use agencies, including the EPA and the Forest Service, the state's Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, have all agreed that what's feasible to do, what should be done in terms of water quality remediation up there has been done. Water quality standards were met before several big remediation projects were done in the early to mid-2000s. So second slide, please. And so that's pairwise between pre-remediation projects at Pacific Mine, at Dutchman Flats, and the Mary Ellen Gulch. So the scale is kind of odd to see a lot of them, but the bad guys, the zinc and the lead and the mercury, arsenic and so forth, for the most part those metals showed decreases of at least half. Some of the others, iron, and some of them didn't, but that's because they're more in the native soil and around inland. Following these remediation efforts, which gathered up all the sort of the easy pickings in terms of mine leftovers around the lower mineral basin and close to the north fork of the American Fork River, created repositories, sealed them in there, covered them over with topsoil and revegetated them. That did a lot of good. That showed a pretty dramatic improvement in water quality. And then the last remaining smoking gun up there, I guess, and that was identified by early studies, was up at Marion Gulch and the lagging mine up at the top of Marion Gulch. And since 1987, Snowbird had been doing as recommended by the Forest Service remediation people, and routing this water that comes out of the mine portal there, not in great shape, but not in terrible shape, around a mine tailings pile there, where formerly just kind of cascaded over that pile and hence into the creek. And they didn't come off the mine tailings pile nearly as clean as it went on to. So this project puts a big drain into the tunnel mouth and pipes the water around so it goes directly into the creek instead of going over the tailings pile. Picking up considerable metals and especially lead. It's a bad tailings pile for lead. Based on that remediation project, just 1,000 feet below the mine tailings, the Marion Gulch stream went from not really supporting any aquatic life to meeting cold water fishery standards and having sort of the full suite of aquatic life represented there. And by the time it got to the mouth of the creek and the confluence with the North Fork, it even meets water quality standards, which aren't applicable because there are no drinking water standards applied to the whole watershed. But it's a strict standard. It's the strictest standard for some metals, and the water then meets it. Cold water fishery standard is stricter for the other metals, and it meets that standard as well. The next slide, please. This shows the gains made before and after Snowbird's remediation work on those primary metals up there. So they're really knocking down. Now, because of these improvements, back to sort of the overview, the 30,000 feet, because of these improvements, because of the size of the project area, because of the distance downstream to the valley aquifer, to the small quantity of water that comes out of the project area, and the big dilution that takes place between the project area and the canyon mouth, there's just very little potential for any notable downstream effect. The project area comprises 2.2% of the American Fork watershed. It's 10 river miles down to the canyon mouth. And the flow from the project area, this is the upper half of Marion Gulch Creek, is about 3 CFS, and that constitutes less than 0.5% of the total groundwater recharge to the northern Utah Valley aquifer. So it's not surprising, it's a small scale. Not surprising if not much shows up at the canyon mouth or has the potential to, but the more relevant comment or reason for this not having potential downstream effects has to do with the water chemistry and the soil chemistry. So I said it's not too complicated. This is a little bit complicated, but it's, I think, after 25 words or less. The point to be made is that these metals are bonded to soil particles and they're not dissolved. That means two things. One is that they don't move, the soil particles don't move through groundwater. They get hung up in the beds of fine materials and the fissures in the rock and so forth, and they just don't go far. And second is they tend to settle out of surface water, which can move them, but they settle out quickly as soon as the flows slow down. And this accounts for most of the effects being localized. I mean, from the beginning, from the time problems were first recognized up there, they stayed close to the mines, to the leftover mining residues where they were generated, and that's been the case forevermore. There's been no degradation, exceedance of the metal standards or degradation of any kind in the wells in the aquifer through the whole history of this mining and cleanup effort. So, in terms of these metals not being soluble, basically they need to be dissolved in order to be soluble and become part of the water instead of part of the soil. They're in soils now, and a lot of mining situations, as you're aware, have acid mine drainage problems. and acids reduce those metals, put them into solution. When they're off into the system, and who knows where they wind up, they're highly mobile. In this case, there are a lot of carbonated soils throughout the central Wasatch, and particularly in this area, that are basic and not acidic, and they buffer the water acidity back down to where, in like that big tailings pile right below that we talked about earlier, the total metals content in there are roughly 100 times what the dissolved metals are. They just seem to stay, because of this chemistry, locked up in the soil particles. So what that gets us down to is we're talking about events that move contaminated soil particles off the site and into places we don't want them to be. And that's really the water quality issue that we're talking about here. So in terms of effects on culinary water, drinking water is taken from a number of springs in the canyon, and of course from a lot of wells out in the valley. And each one of those springs and wells has a source water protection plan that's regulated by the state that identifies, in the case of springs, its catchment zone, or in the case of wells, the recharge zone. That's the places where those two water sources get the water. And with neither the project area does not fall in any recharge zone for anything. And the American Fork River itself, I mean the river channel itself, doesn't pass through in the canyon. Now once you get down into the valley, it dumps out into the primary recharge zone around the mouth of the canyon, coarse materials there, and then it's into the aquifer. A small portion of it is at least. So the river certainly contributes to groundwater recharge, particularly in this primary, as engineers and water people know. The primary recharge zone, which is a band of coarser materials that are undifferentiated, don't have any beds to protect water from percolating through and getting into the aquifer. The good news is only about 4 or 5 wells, municipal wells, are in that zone. Bad news is, I guess for you guys, is one of them yours, but in any case, we haven't recorded any exceedances according to state records, and the metals have never had a blip through the history of all these mine goings on in the upper watershed. So to boil that still leaves us with the question to address with this project is what's the quality of water delivered to the mouth of the canyon and hence into the aquifer. And to boil that question down, as I mentioned, water quality standards were met above Tipple Fork even before the big remediation projects were done in the 2000s and they have since. These projects went beyond to improve water quality significantly, and no exceedances have ever been reported of metals at the canyon. This is good water that's been delivered to the valley aquifer. It always has been. The whole watershed was designated by the state, by the Division of Water Quality, as a non-degradation segment. So if there were to be any exceedances, not even any exceedances, any degradation, any increase in metals at all, regardless of where that fit relative to a standard, then that would trigger state action to remediate it. So against this backdrop, it's just unrealistic to think that this proposed project could generate enough metals to, first of all, undo the mitigation in Mariana Gulch Creek itself. You'd have to undo that first. It's a lot of metal. Then you'd have to dump it into the North Fork of the American Fork, significantly dilute it, and have it bump that up to exceed standards, which would be roughly a 10-fold increase. Next, you'd have to do it past Tipple Fork Reservoir, where those soil bonded particles are going to the bottom, as you're aware they have. And then get through another 10-fold dilution to come out of the canyon mouth within approximating water quality standards. So it's just, all of those scenarios are really unlikely. And if there were, if this was going to play out to where metal bad guys got into the aquifer, then it would have happened before, in the battle days, before those remediation projects were done, when people were running 4-wheelers around on the dumps when the portal discharge was just unregulated into the stream. And a lot more metals were being put into the system at that point. There was still nothing coming out at the bottom. Other, I guess, considerations about the aquifer are that it's, the primary recharge zone is around the canyon mouth, and it's pretty small, again supporting fewer than half a dozen municipal wells, and the rest of the wells are further out into what's called the secondary recharge zone, where most of those wells are deeper, and a lot of them tap protected aquifers, where there's a coarse or a finer material, sand or clay or something is layered in amongst the coarse material. The water's trapped and mobile between those layers, and they protect deeper water quality from any impacts from above. Next slide, please. No, sorry. He's going before that one. No, you're right. Sorry. So that the lighter yellow shade is the primary aquifer, and you can see where the wells are there. When it gets deeper, green, it's out into the deeper aquifers that are tapped by those wells, and when it gets to purple, it's giving water back again instead of recharging from the area. So only about 30% of the river's flow goes to groundwater recharge. 28% exactly, according to USGS. And again, the contribution to that from the project area is less than 0.5%. So those factors, the small number of wells in the aquifer, the way the aquifer is constructed, so that most of those wells don't tap water that's potentially affected by that water, and just the magnitude of it, again, put some safeguards in place that even if something unthinkable happened up there, there are a lot of safeguards in place, plus the regulatory one, the anti-degradation stipulation of the state to protect your drinking water. Secondary irrigation systems and secondary systems for landscape irrigation are another important use of water from the river. Diverted at the canyon mouth again, and the same story pretty much holds. Is the water that's it just hasn't ever approached anything like the standards there. Currently, metals concentrations at the canyon mouth are about 5% of the class 4 state assigned agricultural water supply. So it would again take a 20-fold increase. They'd have to get through all of those nooks and crannies and pitfalls and water chemistry and so forth to get down there before you were threatening the quality of the water for agriculture. Construction in the project area has been cited as the main concern in terms of things that could free things up and result in adverse water quality impacts. There are a couple things about Snowbird's proposal. One is that they've committed in the original application to the county to not do anything that would disturb directly or indirectly any of these mine wastes. I think now that a buffer around them is even being considered to reduce that possibility entirely. An abundance of caution. Another issue that's been brought up is the potential for construction to break into an unknown mine tunnel and reuse water. Points about that are that, first of all, the tunnels are pretty well known. Back in the mining day, people took amazingly good records and recorded the workings of all of these mines in old publications like Hawkins and Butler. And you can find good old plaques of what went on inside of those mines. For the most part, the hard part might be to figure out what mine's what on the ground, because they tended to, here's a picture of that mine, now where that sits on the ground, that's up to you to find out with modern technology and aided by Snowbird surveyor to go up and find some corners and rectify the whole survey. Those are pretty well known. We might not know where every tunnel is, but we know where most of them are, and we'll know before construction takes place that we're not building on them. Another point to consider about the tunnels is that the big excavations that people have been so worried about to build a lift really are a foot thick, 6 foot by 6 foot slab on top with a 30-inch steel column going down 5 to 8 feet. And I'm thinking, just in picturing this, that 5 to 8 feet, if a miner wanted to go 8 feet and be at a spot that's 8 feet under the ground right there, he'd dig where you're digging to build a tunnel instead of going through the aerobic exercise of tunneling enough how to get there. Another consideration regarding these excavations for towers is that before a lift gets certified to be used by the public, it goes through an awful lot of inspection. And the first thing that will be required for lifts and any other disturbance will be a construction general permit, which would require a SWIP, a stormwater pollution protection plan, water quality needs to be in place, enforced, inspected before, early in the long before construction will ever authorized. As a condition for county building permits, the county would require a geotechnical investigation of every hole. Subsequently, the tram board certification of the lift would require documentation for the geotechnical assessment of every hole. So they go in there and dig and find, oh, you got down here and hit a bunch of peat, it's kind of soft, it's not going to be a solid foundation. Then you look for another spot to come up with another construction method that'll overcome that. If it's solid rock, you're solid. If it's you get into sand, again, there are things to mitigate. If you get into water, it's probably not a good spot at all. If it's a natural flow or any other kind, mitigated to another spot. So all of those things are dealt with before the lift is ever built. And then to sign off on it all, the state tram board, with the state engineer serving on it, Forest Service tram engineer, and an independent engineer typically required by the insurance company for the resort, all have to sign off on certifying that it's solid and set solidly on the ground and is not going to tip over. Another thing to notice is Snowbird, in 40 plus years of development in Little Cottonwood Canyon, has been right in the heart of Salt Lake City's municipal watershed. And they've been under the magnifying glass for water quality issues there. In an area that was previously heavily mined. A lot of similarities to the American Fork. And as a result, they've developed sort of the state of the science erosion control BMPs and remediation plans. They're well honed, and the proof's in the pudding there that development over the last 40 years of consistent water quality monitoring, as Snowbird and Alpha both developed, has a couple of blips, the biggest one being in coliform when they built the sewer pipe, the sewer line one. But for metals and across the board, it's been steady. And the water's treated at the mouth of the canyon, and metals are part of the treatment there too, but those are metals that in large part come from White Pine Canyon, which is undeveloped and not part of Snowbird. It wasn't even mined, it's a natural occurrence. So overall, with all of those safeguards in place, and in light of Snowbird's history of successfully developing mitigation measures that have kind of become the standard for the industry, disturbance on the site isn't really likely to put enough metals into the water, really, any metals really, and certainly not enough to jar the system up there locally or not at the mouth of the canyon. Recreation on mine dumps has also been something that's come up as a possible source of adverse effects, and it's important. I mean, the key point now is that it's open to recreation now. A lot of those tailings piles are hardened up and stuff, so walking around on them, you're not going to take any dust loose or really loosen anything up but operating equipment on them would. And now anybody who's got an ATV is free to go up there, run around with a motorcycle or a four-wheeler. So they're subjected to more potential disturbance by recreation now than they would be under this proposal. Two evils of that are dust, breathing the dust. Some of those metals are high enough concentrations that they're not something you want to breathe. Second, if it mobilizes those, loosens them up enough soil, does what gravity does to it, and goes downhill and winds up in the water. Under this proposal, Snowbird would close the dumps to recreational use and prevent further disturbance. They'll have people up there, they'll have a presence and have the wherewithal to enforce closures of the dumps themselves to recreation. In terms of their own recreational use, they have agreed to perhaps not use them at all for skiing, but in any case it would be one of recreation, and they've agreed to a stipulation of not doing it with anything less than 2 feet of snow cover on them, if they do happen to use them at all. So, all in all, this proposal reduced the risk of recreational impacts on recreational or water quality due to that activity in the area. Last thing that's been brought up is avalanches disturbing mine dumps. And the things to note about avalanches are that they, even the big ones that run to ground, as they say, which take the full thickness of snow off, usually don't remove surface vegetation. You know, crack trees, take brush, stuff like that, but they don't gouge the earth generally or get any disturbing, even to the point of taking surface, erasures layer vegetation out. They have been part of the setting up there since the tailings piles were created. But the big ones in question here on the quartzite claim both happen to be, probably by the miner's design, below a big block, below a big nose of a ridge, so that the two major avalanche chutes in the vicinity go either side of them in the case. And the last thing to keep in mind is that avalanche mitigation, avalanche management of a skier is intended to keep the snow on the mountain, not in the pile at the bottom, because you can't ski on it, it's in a pile at the bottom. And it might knock down the chairlift and the personnel, and it's, more smaller, lower magnitude avalanches are the goal. So, again, in the case of avalanche, I don't think there is any real risk to water quality, but whatever it is, it will be reduced by avalanche management. And finally, the application called for, and the concept has been developed since of doing monitoring to make sure that all of these arguments hold up, and that in fact they don't have any impact on water quality. That water quality monitoring plan is kind of an evolving thing at this point due to requests from the County Board of Adjustments. But in briefest terms, it started with a form for water quality monitoring plans for this kind of application developed by the Division of Water Quality by the state. It calls for monitoring of 3 sites, kind of project area boundary, and the 2 sites between there and the confluence with the North Fork of the American Fork River. It would monitor the suite of metals that's found in those mine wastes, as well as hardness and pH and flow. The flow measurement to allow to calculate a load as opposed to a concentration. What's the weight of the metal you're carrying instead of a concentration. 2 years of baseline studies are called for to make enough variation to establish a robust baseline through monthly monitoring. And then monthly monitoring continued through the construction period. Hard telling how long, in the construction phase it hasn't been nailed down yet, but anytime that they're building anything in the monthly, high intensity monitoring will go on. And after construction was done, the remainder of 10 years will be monitored for, is the plan at this point. And that's all been worked out in conjunction with the Division of Water Quality and the water quality scientists. So in conclusion, I think that in terms of the overall situation, the threat to culinary water supplies, and in terms of the threat to culinary water supplies is, again, if it were going to happen, it would have happened by now. We had a much worse situation, a much higher risk of adverse impacts in the 70s and 80s and before monitoring took place. And it just didn't happen. And based on what we've summarized, the results, the studies, the data that we've reviewed, there just isn't a reason to think that this project would unreasonably diminish water quality in the watershed. So that's it in sort of a nutshell, the largest nutshell. And I'm happy to entertain questions as you proceed your time off.
This presentation that you have, and also some of the things that you've stated, are they documented somewhere where we can have access to that?
Certainly the presentation and any of all the documents that these figures are from and so forth.
Well, not so much that, but the statements, with your assessments, the various things that you outlined to us tonight. I notice you have some notes that you're reading from as well, but I mean, do you have any materials prepared that you can provide to us?
Yeah, certainly. It sort of depends on what format it would be most useful to you. And some of it's interpretation of other data, that's our interpretation of it. All the background studies, the dozen big studies and several smaller ones, and USGS databases and Division of Water Quality databases and so forth that lead into some of these graphics.
Yeah, I think that's probably too much for what we're looking for. Probably what we're looking for is you've performed several studies for Snowbird to arrive at the point that you're at now with the conclusions that you've made. And in some form of a summary, you've probably prepared a report that references your sources and makes your conclusions.
I think to be most useful in that regard is probably providing some of those sources and then adding some references to these notes is probably the most user-friendly. And I didn't prepare a report that this is extracted from.
I was hoping to ask briefly from this chart of aquifer recharge areas. It looks like the Pleasant Grove well that's on this map is right on the border between the primary recharge and the secondary recharge area. Is that right? From the resolution, I can't tell. Is it in the primary?
I think it is, yeah.
And what is the practical difference for us of being in one area versus the other? Where's the greater vulnerability is? What's the implication of being in a primary recharge versus secondary recharge?
Well, the 30% or 28% of the river's flow goes into that aquifer someplace. The majority of that happens in that primary recharge zone. That's where it's undifferentiated and there isn't a layering in there to put protective layers in. The most important conclusion, I think, is again that water quality at the canyon mouth has never shown a blip in the face of all of this. So it continues, it started out and has continued to be what the USGS characterizes as the cleanest water in the region to go into an aquifer. It's also young water, the youngest water. It's not going deep any place. Most of it is still coming from the bedrock aquifers under the mountain. It's not surface water. No, it was a long time it hasn't been surface water. I think that said, that zone is still the most vulnerable to whatever happened. Yeah, and the assurance, I guess, is that nothing's happening to monitoring it. The monitoring has never, when the well was developed, the sense has never shown any degradation.
How many mines are we talking about up on your property?
In Mary Ellen Gulch there, it's a moving target because at one point there was the Valera Fan mine and the White Yankee mine and the Globe mine under some other ownership and some connecting tunnels. They were merged. Other times they were walled up again and separated again. But as far as, and then there were a lot of small prospects where people dug a hole and hoped for the best and didn't hit anything. So the major working mines in Mary Ellen Gulch, I think there are 5. Probably.
One question I had, you mentioned that the monitoring program is evolving based on instruction or developments at the County Board of Adjustment level. I'm not familiar with the latest developments there. I've heard that there was a 60-day continuance in a recent hearing. Maybe you can elaborate on what specific instructions were given at the time of that Board of Adjustment hearing and what that evolution looks like now.
Yeah, I can tell you the general of it, the short story of it. Beyond that, it's maybe something for Snowbird to address. But the instruction was, can't Snowbird and American Fork City come up with an agreement on a monitoring plan here? Isn't there a good middle ground to meet both of your needs and so forth? And I think the initial contacts have been made and meetings set up, and that's about the extent it's gone to so far.
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier in your presentation that there would be no effects on culinary water, but then you spoke about the effects on the drinking water, or that there haven't been to this point. So what percentage of the secondary water, what percentage of the culinary water that could possibly be affected if something were to happen?
If you did something, again, to get through all the limitations on that, to have an impact at the canyon mouth, on water quality at the canyon mouth, then a big percent of that, I suspect there are people here who know better than I, is diverted for secondary systems and agricultural water. It's probably on the order of 40 to 50%, I guess.
For secondary?
And your canal company.
Okay.
And 28% of it goes into the aquifer where it joins a lake, a very large body of water under there. With increasing amounts of potential effect from the primary to the secondary output to the aquifer.
Okay. And so has your company been working with the local water boards, American Fork, the groups to make sure that you're all on the same page? Are you working together with them? I know you just suggested a second ago kind of the extent that you've been working with American Fork City, but have you spoken to any of the water districts or something?
We've had several presentations to audiences that included them and had discussions and sort of in context of those presentations. I think the county hearings, and the Board of Adjustment hearings as well.
And what's the response been from those water boards?
They've asked a lot of questions, and I can't speak for them whether we put their concerns at ease or not. I think it's that this work has been characterized sometimes as speculative and one expert against another and so forth. But the water chemistry, the nature of the aquifer, the dilution factor. There's really not anything that I said here that's refutable, or that's one way of looking at it, or something like that. That's simply the way it is. So it's, I think, getting that idea across, particularly to non-technical audiences, can become a challenge. But
I think that would be us, non-technical.
that it is.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do have a couple questions. So,
You want to pull your mic up to your mouth?
no,
Please do.
I do have a couple questions. So you can understand our angst.
Absolutely.
These are our hills. And I've camped up there, they're pristine. And so someone's gonna take a backhoe and start digging up. Different than an ATV. Different in weight, different in size, scope. So, and as a counselor, this is our water, and it's pristine water. It comes up, it doesn't hit the surface until it hits us. So, I am very nervous. I'm full of angst. So, first of all, I think people can manipulate data any way they want. And I know that there have been some paid studies. I think I would feel more comfortable if someone who is not on Snowbird's salary did a study. If I knew that somebody else was fighting for unbiased data, I would feel more comfortable. I'm kind of disappointed in the county, and this is a huge thing for us. This is our water, and I know that you can show me that there hasn't been any minerals since 1970, that it's better than 1970, but we haven't had crack proposed in the hills. So from an educated group of people that need to feel calm, I know that there's a 60-day conditional use.
60-day continuation.
Continuation. So what's gonna happen in the 60 days? And on the maps, I don't, so even if you could, has there been a site plan where this is actually where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, I think to the degree that it's appropriate at this phase of the project. I mean, you don't, the first drawing's up there, that's the one on the right of the first drawing's up there. With the details, the three places where most development will occur, there are detailed drawings of those in the application. And everything is known about what they're gonna build now is depicted in those maps.
And does Snowbird own all of the land that we're going to, that the site plan is going to, like wherever they're going to dig or build is Snowbird property right now?
Yes, as I understand it, that's a requirement of the conditional use permit.
Okay.
And as to that, the difference, just, I mean, you covered a lot of ground there, obviously, and I certainly identify with and fully support your concern about the watershed. I mean, you only make so much, it's not really doing more.
And thank you
This
for,
system that
thank you
you
for
guys.
feeling my needs.
Yeah, yeah. But in terms of that backhoe up there, the difference between, major difference between it and the ATV line around is the ATV comes and goes. The backhoe is gonna be sitting there with, operating in a place that's been enclosed and, stake trails and wattles to protect, to hold any sediment that's loosened on the site during construction on the site. If you sort of have a sudden rain event or something like that, and you catch it there.
So if it's a SWIP project and we have, people that are checking to make sure that you are protecting our
Yeah.
water, who, is that a county thing or is that a state thing?
A lot of different levels. The on-site, the SWIP that I mentioned, this stormwater pollution prevention plan,
Yes.
is sort of the widespread, across the job site, across the construction site, or across the project area is kind of the big gun. And that will outline where every erosion control installation and so forth needs to be. Where do you need water bars? If you're going to do anything to get equipment in, and how do you get it there? You have to walk it over maps. Do you make a temporary road, put the road to bed? Everything's stipulated there.
So that's a
And-
developer checking that or
No,
that's
then the developer has to hire an outside inspector to make sure that all the provisions are adhered to. And that's, according to the state regs now, that's gotta be a also, that the water quality monitoring takes place in this. That's another safety valve on it. The Division of Water Quality is targets those kind of places for their entrance and monitoring. So there's something to look for in that sense. They want to pay particular attention. I think that's a difference, is all that disturbance. And then, once it's done, once the guy's digging with the backhoe and the installation is in place, then there's topsoil, it was segregated at first, put back on it, a native seed mix, planted, geotextile put over it to keep the soil in place till the vegetation is established. And none of that happens with unregulated recreational use.
Another question is, in a recreational cap, and I don't know how Snowbird is taxed in Salt Lake County, but are any of the used taxes going to stay in Utah County to help pay for more road use and all that kind of stuff?
Is your area confined to the water quality? Or what is?
Mine personally isn't. We've had 3 different water quality, watershed hydrology, those sort of specialists involved. In my role, I gotta change hats a lot.
Okay, so you have a
my
broader
degree's-
role than water quality.
Yeah, we looked at the wildlife visual effects.
So I just have 2 questions that then have to do probably not with the watershed. So I do this now at the
I
time.
think Mr. Bonar, and then he probably has someone else that he's also going to call upon if needs be.
Can I ask you a question on this still on just for a second? So American Fork has invested quite a bit of money to protect their watershed. And from what one of their city council members is saying, their, Snowbird's understanding of the perk into the aquifer is different than other views of watershed board members, or water board members. So if there was to be a second opinion, would that come from Snowbird or American Fork and Highland, or where would a second opinion come from, and who would?
I think there's a unlimited number of ways that could happen.
Maybe that's something Snowbird can, I guess, answer.
I don't know, it always, the fact is with consultancies like this, somebody's paying the objective outside contractor, you know. I haven't seen anybody else step up to do it, because it's all, oh, would you do that? That's on Snowbird, isn't it? So, and you ask somebody else to do it, and it's still going to do that until somebody else comes up to do this. But the system falls apart and it doesn't work anymore. So the contractor can't be rejected and walk the line.
Thank you. Did you have anything else you wanted to discuss with us today?
No, sir.
Okay, so just can we ask you some questions?
Yes.
So is the point of purchase all in Salt Lake County?
Yes. It's my understanding, that Utah County would see a significant increase in revenue in terms of personal property taxes, but not sales tax.
Okay, so if I'm a hiker camper and I go up to Tibble Fork and I keep going into Mineral Basin, what will I be stopped from doing that? Will I have to pay?
Are you familiar with where our lifts are currently in Mineral Basin?
Yeah.
So we've had lifts back there for 17 years in Upper Mineral Basin, 2 lifts. And we have not closed it off to hikers, campers, bikers, as long as they do it in accordance with the rules and regulations.
But would you, moving forward with this project, would it be closed at that point once the project was completed?
We would plan to do the same in Mary Ellen Gulch.
Which is what?
Not close it off to hikers, bikers, campers, as long as they do it in accordance with rules and regulations.
Discussed, we talked about there's 5 mines up there. Do you have any plans to clean those sites up, utilities or anything like that? I don't know how long you've started. I don't know how long you've owned those, and so I'm just asking.
Councilman, let me just back up just a step. So what we did many years ago, and Mr. Arts talked about it briefly, is that based on extensive studies that were done, we participated in a small way with a large group, including the Forest Service, Trout Unlimited, and funding from Tiffany Jewelers, and we did what they recommended that we do, and that was to clean up or put some of the tailings at the Dutchman mine and at the Pacific mine into a repository and rechannel the water around those tailings. And also, for those of you that have been up there, you've noticed that there's a guardrail around those, what's left of that, what's around the repository there to keep vehicles off of that. Secondly, after those projects, one of the other recommendations that we worked with that same group on was to go up to the Yankee mine, which is on Snowbird property, and to rechannel the water around some of the tailings up there. And we have done that. They also recommended, and now, Councilman, to more directly address your question, they also recommended that what we do is, keep recreational activities off of those dirt tailings. And so, yes, we would like to, now that we have better access back there, close off access, like we did at the Pacific and Dutchman mines, so that we limit some of the recreational uses that are currently happening in the summertime on those tailings. And we would also look for places that we can restore in terms of unauthorized motorized uses on our private property. We did that in Mineral Basin. You guys, I love the ATV too, but we like it on our private property better when people stay on the existing roads. And where that hasn't happened, then we would continue to go back and revegetate some of those with the matting and seed mix and things like that to restore those areas.
Paul, could I add something?
Sure.
Yeah, in terms of cleaning up mines, those big piles, if they're in a situation where they're exposed to recreation and exposed to water, like and there's a place to do it, which was all three of those added up at the base of a mineral basin when those repositories were created, then that's the logical thing to do, and it's the regulatory approach to do that. Hollow out a spot, you got a big flat area that'll accommodate the engineer's estimate of the amount of material you have, put an impermeable bottom on it, haul all that stuff in, cover it with an impermeable barrier, cover that with topsoil, revegetate it, and out the water around it, and it's put away forever. When I say forever, I guess for a long time. And if those things don't add up, you don't have the place, you don't have the recreational use of the water, the other things to do it, then it's not, not doing anything with them is the recommendation. It's not ducking anything, it's not going around anything, it's what you do with mines in that situation. To quote the EPA, if we've got high and dry tailings piles around, let them leave them be. We've got tens of thousands of them in the western U.S. and that's SOP. It's not anybody slacking and not doing what they should. It's what they should be doing.
I would just like to thank all of you so much. You've given us so much of your time and attention tonight, and we're very appreciative of being able to make our presentation tonight. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bonar, I'm sorry, maybe it's just a couple more minutes of your time. Okay. Some other questions that are not directly related to water quality. You've started to address them with respect to access. I think you mentioned you would allow essentially foot-type traffic as long as they follow the rules of the area and the usage, and limit the vehicle traffic, liability and other reasons, accessing the tailings. What can we expect from a usage, commercial perspective, as far as additional traffic coming through the canyon? Will there be access to these lifts and other amenities that you're installing? Is there parking? What else is included from the American Fork Canyon side? And how do we expect commercial traffic and whatnot? Is there any impact that way?
Mayor, I'm so glad you asked that question. Thank you, and then I can clarify on that. There is no connection with this project area down lower in American Fork Canyon. It's just in the upper part, on our private property, in the upper part of Mary Ellen Gulch, and again, where we want to relocate the lift in the upper part of Mineral Basin. So I wouldn't anticipate any impacts or increased traffic on the highway or parking problems in American Fork Canyon.
So there'll be no place to purchase a lift pass, no place to park your car, no place to begin your skiing day from AF Canyon?
No, sir.
And then with respect to some citizens that I think maybe you've addressed their questions as recently as a year ago. Public opinion, I think, is probably the best place to put it. I think you were quoted making a statement that if the public did not favor this project happening in American Fork Canyon, that you would rather let it sit. Is that a correct characterization of the prior statement?
Mayor, I would characterize that they're, going back to the Mountain Accord process.
I'm not familiar with all of what took place there,
And
so I don't know which process it was.
Okay, well, going back to the American Fork Vision process and the Mountain Accord process, there were lots of other ideas and things that were discussed. And most of those, many of those, were on public land. And so to me, that's the difference in that statement. We've listened to a lot of the comments and feedback that we've gotten and eliminated virtually all those things that were discussed and talked about on public lands.
So then, what we might conclude from today's discussion is that everything to do with the project now being presented is all completely retained within what Snowbird owns. It's all private land.
Yes, sir.
Maybe this was already addressed in a previous question, but mountain bikers, hunters, how will they be affected by the project? Or will they be?
I would characterize that it would be consistent with what our track record is in Upper Mineral Basin, where we already have the 2 lifts. We have not, again, we've had the lifts in Utah County in Upper Mineral Basin for 17, 18 years. And we have not closed it to hikers, mountain bikers, campers, hunters, as long as it's done within the ordinances.
How much land do you own up there?
You know, I hate to toss out a number, Councilman, because, it would just be a guess.
Is Colby there?
I think in American Fork Canyon, I think it's approximately 1,800 acres.
Did I say that into the microphone?
I heard it.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, it's approximately 1,800 acres that we own in American Fork Canyon.
It's just, we get questions, and so it's good to know.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Bonar? Thank you for your time, sir. We really appreciate you taking time to come and visit with us. We're going to invite the only group we know of that's organized and vocal on the subject to come to our next work session so they can give us their own perspectives and hopefully facts around what you discussed, and you're certainly welcome to be in attendance at that meeting.
As you should, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you all again very, very much for your time and attention tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now have a presentation by David Larson on a volunteer website.
I'm trying to get this up on the screen so you can see. I'm excited to show you the culmination of a year and a half to 2 years worth of work here to finally bring this together. So I want to make sure everybody knows that Trent Bowen and Dion Giles are really the two people that have put the most time and energy into making this happen. We are really excited to be able to bring this to this point and show you what we've got, and then hopefully be able to roll it out here soon so that it can be a benefit to the community as well as the city staff. So it's a little bit small up there, but I want you to be able to see the full picture. What you've got is hopefully a quick and easy way to see all of the different volunteer opportunities that are within the city in one place. And within a couple of clicks be able, as somebody that wants to volunteer or wants to register some interest that you'd like to volunteer, to be able to know who to contact or have the ability to submit your interest. So let me walk you through this a little bit. You've got basically two sections. The list section of the current projects or current opportunities available, and then you've got the search area over here. And when somebody comes to the page, the first thing you see is this alphabetical list of all of the different projects available. And currently we've got from Arts Commission down to Yellow Star Thistlepole, that amount. So when it's just the name, really that's all you can see at this point, is being able to recognize what the name is. If you want to go into any single one of those to get more detail, for example, this wild clematis removal, that sounds really exciting. So you click on that, you can see a picture of what it may be. It tells you a little bit about what categories or that it fits into, basically what department within the city it's connected to, as well as the size of group that is generally there to be able to do that project. So in this case, it can count as an Eagle project or a large group, somebody to come to do that. And then a little bit of a description of what that entails. And then right there under the project, you can fill out your information, put in some contact information, you hit submit, and that automatically goes to the department head who is over that volunteer opportunity, and they'll be able to contact you and organize the details, the schedule, things like that.
And I'll
So
just go to their city email.
goes to their city email. So that's for wild clematis. That's pretty exciting, I think. Anybody? Too far. Or let's say you come here and you're not really sure what you want to do, but you know that you've got a group organized of 25 people from your neighborhood or community group or a church or something like that, and you say, well, we know that we have a large group over here on the side. You can search by either category or by group size. So let's click on the group size, and it will automatically bring up the projects that would apply to that group size. The other option over here on the right is by category. Let's say you're an Eagle Scout, and instead of calling Dion and saying, how many Eagle Scout projects do you have, or are there any that are exciting, you can just come look right here. Currently we have 6 Eagle Scout projects available. You click right there, you see all the different ones.
They're all exciting.
And they are all exciting. And you can see that there are already 6 available right now that a scout could look at, read about, and determine for themselves whether they're interested in it, and shoot an email off by submitting their information there. For example, this staining, painting of park facilities, we don't have a picture there. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. It still has the description. You can submit your name and information right there. One thing that we don't have is a contact for each one, right? A name and phone number that you could call to ask questions. The idea is that you submit this form. It doesn't automatically sign you up or schedule you for a date or time or anything like that. This is how you submit the interest, and then the department head over that opportunity will be able to contact you and arrange details or answer any questions, things like that. Just because you submit interest doesn't mean you're automatically signed up for it. One thing that I think is really neat is when you come to the home page, we want to keep some of these ongoing volunteer opportunities, Arts Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, Beautification Commission, Planning Commission, some of those types of volunteer opportunities that are ongoing, Neighborhood Chair, for instance. Those will be on here perpetually. And for example, the Historic Preservation Committee, or Commission, You've got a description there. It outlines a little bit about some of the responsibilities, the term of 4 years, things like that. And then we've been able to customize the actual application right here on the site with the questions that are specific to the Historic Preservation Committee or Commission. And then that can go directly to Kathy, and she'd be able to have the information of anybody. So if we may or may not be filling a position right then when somebody puts their information in, but then we'd have applications on file for when an opening does happen. And we'd be able to go to those people first that have already submitted their interest.
So on this one, there wasn't a contact, like the other one said, you will be contacted by Beyond Giles.
Mhm.
Who would be the contact for the Historic Commission? Who would that go to?
These would all be sent to Kathy as it's a commission appointed position. But we can send that to whoever we want to send that to. They're all customizable. We can have each project go to individuals we want, or we've been able to set up kind of a group where it's the same types of questions and they can go to the right individual. So
And
that's
like
all
having the name on
customizable.
there, so if for some reason it doesn't make it to the right person or whatnot, they at least have someone that can call and say, you know, I'm supposed to follow up with Kathy Presser, Beyond Giles, whoever it may be.
That's
so
just
it's not
something
putting
when
a phone number.
we type out the description, we just need to make sure we
Okay.
include that in the
Okay.
description.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a way to find specifically a board or commission. So if you go over here to the right and click,
Yep.
okay, so they're kind of grouped like that, so alphabetically on that
Exactly.
page and then,
Can you show the RSS feed there?
This right here.
Yeah.
You can set up email notifications to be sent to you or the custom RSS feed to subscribe to. So when there's updates or things like that, you can get notified to your own email if you go to that RSS feed link. Did everybody see where I went to right there? This little orange button is the RSS feed. That's something pretty cool nowadays that a lot of times we want things to come to us rather than we go find them, and so you can put your information in there and it can be pushed out to you when we update it on our site.
does it show how many openings are available for each volunteer opportunity?
Usually there's just one.
I mean, like, so if it was a group, and if it, does it specify how many people can come in the group for one project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can search over here by group size. Eagle projects we put as their own, but then individual, large group,
Yeah, we-
medium group. We've also got a,
Click on the large group.
yeah, you bet. You've also got small group, but right now we don't have any projects that have a small group tag, and so it doesn't show up. These are only the current available ones.
So if it's a one-time project, once it's done, we pull it off.
Right,
If it's
we
not,
can-
if it's, there's enough work for 15 different groups, we'll just keep that up there until that whole thing is done.
Exactly.
Can you click on the first one?
Yeah.
Remove vandalism instead. Picture of Discovery Park, you'll notice the categories is that it's an Eagle Scout project and it's within the Parks Department. And then group size, it's either going to be an Eagle project or a large group of 16 plus people could sign up as well. Description, you submit your information.
So whoever fills that out is saying, I have a group of 16 or more people that would like to do this.
Right.
Well, that picture, could we get Lynn to go down with the gas spray going?
You want some vandalism on there, Eric?
Let's use Photoshop for that instead of actual spray.
Youth fans.
So that is one thing I think that's really neat is the ability to just kind of archive it on the backside, on the admin side for us, that we don't delete the project necessarily when somebody signs up, but we can make it so it's not visible on the front end. The user sees it, and so each year if we want to put the same project up, I know there's a few video that he's talked about that come up annually, and he'll be able to just repost it, right? Just a click of a button, it'll automatically be there again, and be able to continue to receive.
Can you show us how this is accessed from the city website?
We haven't put a link there yet. We wanted to preview it and do some tests and things, submit a few test interest and have them go through, which we've done, and it all works, and it's pretty much ready to go. The thing that I like about it is that it's current opportunities, so if you come here and there aren't very many, well, that means right now things are being filled, and that's a wonderful thing. But if you come back in the next week, there might be some additional projects and things. And when we do put a new one up, you'll notice here for the staining, painting, and park facilities, it's got this new little checkbox, right? Not a checkbox, but a little indicator. So last week when we put all these up, there was a whole bunch of new boxes, and now they're not new because they've been up for more than a week.
So there was a couple positions open on the planning commission. Does it specify in the description that there's 2 or 1, once they do this, kind of specify that?
No, not necessarily. We can include that in the description if we need to, or highlight it or something. And the thing that I really love actually is that each job or each opportunity, each project has its own link, its own URL that we can then post on the city website or whatever, so that people don't come to the entire page. They'll go straight to the description, and we'll be able to promote them when they're open individually.
So on social media, Facebook.
Social media, things like that, we can post them and say, hey, we need a neighborhood chair for this, for Little Denmark, and have that up there and have a link directly to the application. Somebody can see a job description, put in their information, hit submit, and we know who they are.
That's good. It's really neat.
Do we have any internships, by the way, that are documented like that? Is there a place, like what happens when a UVU student or something has an internship, or a high school student?
Yeah, so if we had an internship position, we would just put it on here, volunteer intern or whatever, and then if there were people interested, they could push towards that. And every once in a while, we'll have a student just call us directly and say, hey, do you have something we can do? And sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. And we have a volunteer intern right now in admin that is looking for experience in city government, and he's doing some HR stuff and some stuff at the rec center. So we accommodate some of that, but I think if we had something specific we need an intern to do, I think we just put it up here, and then we can send it out on social media that we're looking for this, something specific as far as internship.
I know that I just went through a counselor situation with my girls in high school, and that was one of the topics that we talked about was available internships.
Yeah. And so we want to accommodate what we can. I mean, when we bring an intern in, that means they need a workspace, they need a computer, and those types of things. And so we just can't take everybody who wants something. We have to be a little selective on the timing of all that.
And make sure it's not more work.
Yeah, well, we've had good luck with interns. I mean, Dagan's had a few, we've had a few, and I mean, these are generally kids in college that want to make their way in the world, and they work hard for us, even though we've had paid internships in the past, and we've had volunteer ones, and we've got good quality. We've been impressed.
So that's something we could let you know that we have
I think when the opening comes up, then yes, we could send something to them and put the link, and then they could pass it on to their students if somebody wanted to sign up.
Great job, David. Looks good.
Thank you.
And you said it was who now that was involved in the creation?
Trent and Dion.
Excellent. Thanks. Great. It's awesome.
Okay, so this will be linked to the city website and the city Facebook page and the,
I think what you'll initially see,
Pinterest
well, I
and
don't know if you want to check this out.
Yeah, we'll make this live and start to promote it, and we'll be able to put it out through all of the social media channels. We'll have a
One of those boxes will probably, at least to start, we'll put that up there. Probably put a slider as well. Once it's been around for a year, we can maybe do it a little differently, but
link on the website, on the city website, and then be able to really promote it and have people use it.
I think we'll have we have 4 boxes. If you can picture our city website in big words, volunteer opportunities in Pleasant Grove, and somebody clicks that and it takes them to the page. Those 4 boxes on the right.
Yeah, we'll have one of these boxes that we'll leave there for a while that says volunteer opportunity for your website.
you could probably have a little button on that, one of those, on the slider that says, has new on it.
Oh, if it's a brand new slider?
Yeah, just have a,
Or a button on the right-hand side, a permanent button.
We'll just have it read that, like when you had your new on the list.
That's a good idea.
Just to have it new so that if somebody just looking at it, say, oh, there's something new out somewhere.
Good idea.
Gosh, I wish we had an app.
Well, we like what you have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Push notifications.
Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to discuss the next items on our agenda. So this is for the February 16th meeting. And then you also have the March 1st attached.
Well,
So,
the March 1st, I mean, you can take a look at that, there's not a whole lot to, and there'll be more on that by the time we get there.
okay.
I think, in fact, the 16th, we'll probably spend a few minutes talking about March 1st, but for the purposes of tonight, I think we just covered the 16th.
Okay. So we have an appointment on the board, beautification board. Presentations. Number 8A is a proposal to build privately funded splash pad at downtown park.
Yeah, so,
Approved?
Item 8B.
we have had a couple of residents came in and met with me this morning that would like to start a fundraising campaign to build a splash pad. They are going to come next week because they need a commitment from the city that if they raise the funds that we could put it in our downtown park. So Dion and I have talked about it. On our side, as far as the splash pad going there would be great, that'd be incredible. We do have a little bit of concern about parking, but I think it'd be something manageable if this happens. And they're just getting started. They want to, approach businesses and certain things. They want to do a concept plan. So they want to show the concept plan with it being a downtown park. So, but I want them to come get a little exposure. I mean, we'll be streaming the meeting. I want the council to be familiar with the project so that when they start the fundraising, we can, encourage that. But their idea is they would raise the funds for it, for the capital cost of putting it in. They give it to the city. We would actually go bid it out, build it. We would end up maintaining it when it's all said and done. But the big ticket item is giving the capital cost. They're going to try to raise funds for it.
Speaking of streaming.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I asked for some feedback, and it's still quiet for some people.
They probably just have to turn up the volume on their
I
computer.
asked them to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still quiet. I asked them to go on their phone and laptop. I mean, some it's okay, but others it's still quiet. And the other thing is, it's buffering a lot. Like it's not like a true live stream. It's delayed and it's buffering a lot. Is it possible to have the company that we've used for this, can they watch and see kind of what the issues are? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a council meeting, but have they personally come out and seen if there's any
Yeah, so
issues?
they came out Thursday,
Yeah.
and we sat down and we tested all the microphones and with the stream. So we ran a stream for 20 minutes, and we talked with the microphones here. We moved the microphones back. We had talking right in, and so we did that, and then we kind of shut everything down. I went back to my office and I watched it in my office.
Was it fine?
Yeah, I
Was
mean,
it buffering?
No one.
it wasn't buffering
He wasn't watching it last
when we were doing it.
No one can hear it tonight.
So I think the sound issue is really people talking into the microphones. Our gentleman here was pretty quiet, and we got to talk right into the microphones. That's how the sound projects. I'm guessing they could hear the mayor fine. I'm guessing they could hear
No.
Sid fine.
Couldn't hear anyone.
They said that they couldn't hear the mayor and they could barely hear some other council members.
And I got messages that they couldn't hear the phone guy.
The speaker.
Yeah. And they had it up all the way too.
And I do worry that we're making them be hunchback.
I saw that.
You're not.
Well, we talked to the
Someone go to that, right?
so we talked to the company about a different microphone, one where the whole neck would move, and they said you would have to bolt it down to that, and it wouldn't be wireless. And at that point, you'd have to wire it into something, which means we wouldn't be able to necessarily. I mean, we'd have to unplug it and move it, and I'm not sure what the wiring is in the ground there. So
It sounds like it's better than last week, but the people that I've asked it's still quiet. And that it's buffering a lot, I don't know. That it's not really a true live stream that we're delayed.
Maybe we should have one of those people working with the people that fix these things, so they have somebody to, a real user in the community, giving feedback. kind of track it from there. Can you work on that?
Yeah, we'll track it down. And the
How big?
buffering's a new one. That one we haven't had anybody, you know.
Well, I noticed from the first time that it wasn't a true live stream, it was delayed by a few seconds, and I don't
It's
know.
delayed.
It's delayed.
Yeah.
Was it even delayed on when the residents came and filmed? I don't know, I don't think it was.
I don't know. I don't know.
So
Well,
is
it's
that-
gonna, so there's a difference between a delay and a buffer.
Right,
I'm
right.
assuming the
So
delay
even
should be a
issues.
non-issue.
Are you watching it right now?
Yeah, I'm not having any trouble at all. So I'm logged
I've had-
into YouTube, so.
Are you having any trouble?
It buffers every once in a while, but still, I mean, I can hear, but I don't wanna crank it up.
I mean, I know it's not gonna be perfect, but I just, if the majority of people watching are, it's hard for them, I just wanna make sure, I think we're getting there. I don't know, we'll just,
If we could get the list of people that are having the trouble
okay.
and in touch with the technical people, then they can work with it to see, you know, specifically what is the issue.
Yeah, I mean, just as we've tested it, like I said, I went back to my office, they were talking in here, I had David on the phone, he was in here. I could hear it fine in my office, so I assumed we were okay. So,
Tomorrow is public safety, it's gonna be streamed, right?
yes,
So we can have some testers.
That's a good idea, that'd be a good one too. So will they be able to have these microphones, the different people at PSV?
We can make arrangements for that. I don't think it's impossible.
Okay.
I am having a lot of buffering now, so. But it's hard to tell whether or not that's a function of our broadcasting or something
Well,
else.
see, that's what I'm wondering,
on
if
the
you're having
internet.
buffering in here, that's something to do with our connections, and that's why it's.
Well,
going
one
up.
thing's for
Difficult
sure,
to tell.
we're not gonna solve this problem tonight. So, let's get some technical people together with the ones that are actually having the problem
yeah,
and work it out. Let's see if we can't get there then.
we'll do that.
Thank you.
We're getting there now.
Okay, I like that splash pad idea, that's great. Okay, item 8B, certificates for graduates of Leadership Academy.
Yeah, so we have our Leadership Academy, we do 2 times a year. We just finished our 3rd go-round, and we like to present them their graduation certificates.
Excellent. Okay. And then item 8C is a presentation by the Historic Commission regarding the CCC buildings located at 285 West, 1100 North.
Mrs. Dion.
You want me to take this one? So Carmen King, the historical chair, contacted me about 3 weeks ago. Originally, when Provo River developed their new shop and grounds there, they removed portions of the CCC buildings, and they continue to maintain a couple of them. One is a doctor's office, the other is just a maintenance shed, basically. At the time, there was quite a bit of reporting done and historical data collected on the CCCs. They're coming next week to present to you a proposal to possibly move one of these buildings to city property somewhere to maintain that historical value. They've thought about a couple locations, been the Pioneer Park, which it really doesn't fit the theme there. The other option was possibly Anderson Park, where the scouts could utilize that as a little meeting room or something as they hold their events there. So they're just going to come and kind of get a temperature of the council on, you know, moving the doctor's office, which is a 20 by 20 building, is pretty costly because it has its floor is connected to the structure. The shed, we can take as much as, or not as much as we want, but the shed's 20 foot by 90 foot. And it comes in 4-foot sections, so it's easy to move, so it wouldn't require like a home mover or something of that nature. It would just require some concrete pads. They do have some cost estimates, and they're just going to come in and present, get a temperature. The Bureau of Reclamation, who owns the property, are planning on demolishing these buildings later this summer. So it's just an informational type, kind of get a temperature of the city council.
Sounds good, Dion. Thanks. All right, nothing under 9. Item 10A, consider approval of a 3-lot final plat called Melia's Estates, is that right? Melia's? Okay, consisting of approximately 3.8 acres on property located at approximately 273 west, 2300 north in the R120 zone.
All right, so this was determined to be an illegal subdivision between 2 lots, and the property owners wanted to address the property lines and make it a legal subdivision. So that's just kind of a housekeeping thing to clean up lines and create 3 legal lots in this area.
Any questions? Okay. Item 10B is to consider for approval a 13-lot final plat for Valley Grove Business Park, Plat A. Vacation of lots 1, 2, 3, 4, Parcel A, and road parcel of DMV subdivision number 1.
Okay, so we're coming back at you with the both the plat and the site plan for the Valley Grove St. John's Properties development. So the plat will take in the 2 block areas between the BMW site and North County, the freeway over to the left side and North County Boulevard to the right side. 13 separate lots being part of this plat, and you can see some of the buildings located on there, but this is the plat itself. Then the next item will be the site plan, which is basically the same information, but we'll have more detail as to the buildings and phasing of the buildings, interior roadways, landscaping.
Any questions on this? Any other information you need to present us before then?
Well, you did bring forward the first item, which is the plat, and then this is kind of not setting in the right direction, but Pleasant Grove Boulevard would be there along the bottom of the screen. Excuse me, yeah. And the next item would be included request for a waiver of certain design guidelines or requirements.
And that's on item C.
Right.
To consider for approval a site plan for Valley Grove Business Park, including a waiver of certain design requirements per city code, section 10-14-20, on approximately 22.8 acres located approximately 2000 west Grove Parkway in the Grove zone. Okay. Anything else, Ken, on that? Questions, council? All right. Item D, 10D, is to consider for approval awarding planned and engineered construction, Inc., the fiscal year 2015-16 sewer rehabilitation project with additive alternative bid number 1 and additive alternative bid number 2.
So this, Mayor and Council, this is our standard in situ form lining of sewer lines throughout our city, and we'll just be looking at that and awarding that.
Okay. How many, do we have a lot of bidders on this?
I don't know the exact number on this. I think there's usually about 2 or 3 is all on this type of work. It's a little bit specialized work, but we normally get a couple. We also try to bid it in tandem with American Fork City, who does the same type of work, which we feel is a benefit. We may, as I was talking with Clorox, we may consider trying to benefit a little bit more from the size of the project in the coming years, and maybe jointly bid out a project with American Fork would be something we might want to consider to benefit from the size of a project and get a little bit lower cost on the project, as well as the administration of that contract and the bidding. And so it's just something that we pitched. It was too late this year, but it's something that we may want to consider in the future.
So are we thinking that there are more vendors out there that provide this service and we're just not bidding because of the size of the project?
No, I think it's just more that we can benefit by combining some of the things together. Less cost in bidding and advertising and construction management, as well as you get a better cost when you get a bigger size project from these vendors. The mobilization costs stay, relatively the same, but you get more project done for your money. So it would be a thing that would have to coordinate with Tina to see if it's even possible, but they were open to the idea of talking about it further. And a coordination project where we would pay for our portion, they would pay for theirs, but we contracted under one contractor.
Does Linden do the same thing?
They may. That'd be something that we consider. I don't know of a specific project they've done recently, but
Mayor,
in the past they have.
I just looked, we had 3 bidders on the project.
3 bidders.
And what am I not?
Okay, any other questions, council? All right, item 10E is to consider for approval awarding, I hope this is right, XXXX. Okay. The fiscal year 2014. Okay, keep it PG-13. FY 2014-15 culinary water improvement projects.
So the name of the project actually is fiscal year 2014-15 culinary water improvement project. We did not get it constructed last year. It now went into bidding and we didn't change the name of that for some reason. But that is the name of the project. It was bid today. The bids were due today by 2 p.m. We received 5 bids, and it looks like we should be good to, we'll be looking at those in the next coming days and make a recommendation for award on that project.
Okay.
This is the project that is replacement of the water line from 1st West to 6th West on Center Street. We have the one railroad crossing there at Grove-Crest Villas that will be boring under the street there as well. So it will have some impact to that road, but I believe based on the alignment that we should be able to keep the traffic flowing in both directions, shouldn't have to shut it down. If it is, it'd be for a very limited time.
Okay. There's nothing else on the agenda for next week to discuss. Do you have anything else, Scott, on that?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right, back to tonight's agenda. I think that about covers it. Motion to adjourn.
So we're making,
Do we have a second?
I thought Lynn was going to say. So I'll make a motion to
Lynn,
adjourn.
have you seconded yet? You want to do that?
Okay, so we have a motion. I captured it as a motion by Sid and a second by Lynn. Is that right?
Okay.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Aye.